Hello and welcome to Coffee with Dr. Carla. I'm Dr. Carla and this is ℂ𝕆𝔽𝔼, and we are glad that you're here with us. And today our goal is to talk about some mental health related issues and the stigma that seems to be surrounding them. And so I know I've told you this story before, but when I decided to go back and leave education and then go into the world of counseling, I did a lot of interviewing different schools and departments, and I was trying to figure out if I needed another doctorate or just another master's and the whole nine yards. And a lot of people were asking me, well, what kind of things are you interested in studying? And I remember saying to them very specifically, there's a lot, I was interested in a lot of things, but it amazed me how people who were undergoing such horrible, horrible things like a terminal illness or something to that nature, and yet they are a ray of sunshine. They were so positive and almost 100%. Maybe if you look at stats, maybe that's not possible. Let's say 99% of the people I talked to said there's no such thing as positive psychology. And I thought, okay, all right, whatever, that's cool. And then I remember when I finally decided to what school I was going to go to and everything, we had new student orientation. And the way they had it set up was that each table had new students, a faculty member, and then one or two students that were ahead of us. So, like, we were incoming people, somebody who was a year or 2 years ahead of us. And it was for all the different programs that the university mixed together. And interestingly enough, at that table during orientation, someone mentioned positive psychology. And everyone started laughing. And I'm thinking, really? That's kind of weird. And the professor that was sitting there, he ended up being one of my favorites too. He says, yeah, the world is not ready for positive psychology. It's much easier to be negative and think all these awful thoughts because then we continuously have jobs. If the world is positive, then what are we going to do with it? And I thought that's really an interesting take on it, right? But he made me realize that maybe the world of psychology and counseling wasn't really ready for positive psychology. But I'm so glad that in the years since then, I've seen huge amount of change. And I know this is a topic that you just, seem to gravitate towards and really embrace. So I wanted to kind of like open up with my crazy story and then maybe just kind of hear about some of the different things that you've been finding in regards to positive psychology.
Yeah, I definitely feel like the same thing, like super gravitated towards it. And I always thought it was very interesting with, like you said, how our world, like there is so much focus on negative. You could turn on the news and, majority of it's going to be negative or,
Right.
this or that. And
Drown in it for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's very interesting to see how, like, yeah, we have this push for like being like perfect and whatnot, but we still have this problem of like, okay, how do we get people from like, instead of going from like, oh, like I'm negative or like suffering from there just to like normal, but how do you get from like that zero to like having like a happy, fulfilling life? And I think that is a super important thing because everyone is striving for that in one way or another, but looking into how can we make that happen? What are the people that are doing it doing? How can they be successful? How can you emulate that and repeat those same things?
I mean, I know our brain is hardwired to think about the bad because that's how we survived, back in the caveman days. We had to have that kind of negative mentality, otherwise we'd be eaten by some, you know, crazy animal. But
Exactly.
we're not in that, state anymore. And equally, Freud, not necessarily my favorite, but he did do a lot for the world of psychology. He says our thoughts can make us sick,
Oh yeah,
right? So if our thoughts can make us sick, can they not make us well?
exactly.
Right? So like if negative thoughts make us sick, could positive thoughts make us well? Right? And so I think that's why the positive psychology for me and in the talks we've had outside of today um, seem to be, intriguing for us.
Exactly. And I think that comes back to also like our how we're viewing happiness. I feel like you said,
Mm,
I feel like people view happiness in such a weird light where it's like, I feel like so many people think of happiness as like, oh, having like a successful job or money or like, this or that. And yeah, those things can add to happiness, but like happiness can be like your thoughts and what they're telling you and how you're treating yourself and others, and what type of things you actually feel like passionate and connected to. And I feel like a lot of people don't view it like that. I think people more view it as like accomplishments, which is like a part of like happiness, and like they talk about that in positive psychology. But at the same time, it's like you can create your own happiness just from how you're viewing things. If you're like, there's people that are millionaires that are still super depressed and stressed, and there's people that are, you know, just kind of the bare minimum, and they're super happy and would not trade their lives for anybody else. So
Right.
very interesting to look at.
Right. Is there a particular characteristic or a trait that you feel like needs to be developed or needs to be present in order to have kind of that really grounded, positive, joyful way of being?
Yeah, I think one of the big components I feel like that's beneficial is kind of like mindfulness. I feel like that's everywhere now, but I think a lot of times with like anxiety, depression, all this other stuff, we get either wrapped up in the past or the future. And
Okay.
and I think if you're in the present moment, if you're just sitting outside, listening to like the birds and the noises, if you're in that present moment and centered, you just kind of get lost in the moment. You're not worried about like paying bills or this or that. And I think that is definitely a key feature. Is like, hey, how do I center myself and just focus on what's in front of me and those values that are important to me, such as like if you're connected to like people or doing a job you're passionate about or this, that's just gonna make that's your like strengths even better.
Yeah, and it sounds like they're by being grounded, in the present, in the here and now. When we talk, that's a big buzzword, right?
Oh
The
yeah,
here and now. Um, if you can get yourself to do that, then what will happen is there's much more gratitude. You're much more appreciative of what you have in front of you. So you'll notice a sunset, like
hmm
you said, and you'll be able to say, wow, look at that. Look at all the colors. Look how beautiful that is.
exactly,
Right? And just really be able to fill yourself up with those positive vibes.
exactly. And like you said, and then it's like really just taking in like those moments and not letting your like those negative thoughts creep in. It's like what, I'm gonna choose to focus on you know this other stuff. I know one of the big positive psychology books is like learned optimism is one of like the key things they talk about. It's like you can learn to be optimistic just like we're wired to be negative, and like I said, and I think that mindfulness build like you can build off of that into creating more
So
optimism for
something you can
yourself.
learn, and it's a choice. Yeah, I mean, and a lot of people think they're just hardwired to be crabby or to
Yeah,
be, to be at odds with the world, and to know that you can learn that is, hopefully people are hearing you can learn how to be positive. You can learn how to be grateful. It's awesome, right?
yeah, exactly. You're rewiring your brain into a new form of thinking. It's just a matter of putting in the work and being consistent with it.
Is there a exercise or an activity that you particularly like that you do with clients that maybe you can kind of walk us through?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite things, I feel like I talk about this one probably way too much. I feel like people might be annoyed with it, but the gratitude journal.
Yeah.
I love the gratitude journal. I feel like it's such a simple, easy way. So basically, the gratitude journal, there's a couple different ways to do it, but kind of like the basic way. Taking a couple of minutes in your day, it could be 5, 10 minutes, and just writing like 3 things that you're thankful for or grateful for in that day. It can be as big as like, oh, I got a promotion at work, to even just like, I had a great breakfast.
I
Yeah.
didn't burn my breakfast, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and I think that starts getting your mind into like, even if you had like the worst day ever, it's like, hey, you know what? How can I find that little light shining through the crack? And that's starting to rewire your brain into, hey, I'm going to choose to focus on the positives, even if there were negatives, instead of the negative overweighing all that other stuff.
So that's the basic for gratitude
Yeah.
journal. Okay. What are there twists or turns that you ever add to it?
Yeah, I feel like you can get more elaborate too. Like gratitude journal, I feel like is something you can do pretty much every day. And I think sometimes the other kind of form I really like of it is um, we are really social creatures. Some people are super like I can talk to anybody, and some people just like a little bit more close knit groups of people. But I think no matter what, we have a social connect to this. So one of the other ones I like is writing like a gratitude letter or like a text message, phone call to someone that you love. And I feel like
Oh,
that's
nice.
something that
Okay.
does not get, done as much. I feel like some people automatically do that, but if you don't do that, it feels good for that person that you're giving to, but we also feel some of that ourselves. It's like, hey, I appreciate it. You feel that connectedness, and it kind of forms the bond a little bit more.
I'm going to show my age here, but like snail mail used to be the way to go. And I remember when I wasn't living at home and I was away from my friends, we would write these really elaborate letters and we'd make them really fancy. And then, just in case it wasn't crazy enough, once they were sealed in the envelope, we'd cut pictures out of magazines and paste them on there.
Oh
And so
yeah.
these letters would come just like these really elaborate, crazy things. But it was all about expressing our joy of being able to communicate with that person. And then, oh my God, when we get one back, it was like, wow, look at the crazy thing she did for me, or the crazy thing that he did for me, right? And so, yeah,
Yeah,
it was really interesting. But we don't do snail mail really anymore.
exactly.
So, but hey, we could still do it. The United States Post Office still exists. They still have
Thing.
stamps. They still have mailboxes. There's envelopes, like, and they even ones that you peel and you stick. I mean, it's awesome. So you could still do snail mail,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
But why not and have some really have some fun? Because I think people are surprised. I don't think people look at their mail anymore, and there's like, oh, bills.
Yeah.
If they even get bills, because all
Yeah,
my bills come electronically. I don't even get bills in the
yeah,
mail anymore.
advertisement or
It's an
bill.
advertisement or junk. Exactly, exactly. Um, Before we finish, one other tip, one thing, if someone could just do one thing besides the gratitude journal, which I think everyone should do at some point, but what's one other thing you would recommend for somebody?
Yeah, I think kind of keeping that idea of like happiness in your consciousness. I feel like we don't do that a lot. I feel like a lot of people are just going through the motions
Okay.
throughout their day. So kind of looking at like, hey, what's one thing I can do today to, find some positive or happiness. I think that's an important goal. I think it's like you could have that every day of your life and, make it. And I think a lot of people don't do that. It's like, hey, I'm gonna wake up, go to work, come home, eat dinner, watch TV, go to bed. And I think if you kind of have that intention and like purpose in it, it can be a powerful thing.
And I suspect, no, I know for a fact that I could wake up, get dressed, go to work, come home, eat dinner. I could do that, but I could weave happiness in by putting on my favorite radio station and singing along, or,
Yeah,
calling a friend and checking in on how they're doing. I mean, there's all sorts of different ways, right?
exactly.
So,
Yeah, get creative with it.
exactly, exactly. Hey, just so you know, if you guys are interested in working with Tyler, right? He is here at the Cognitive Clinic. He's one of our therapists, so just give us a call, and I'm sure we can figure that out. So remember, you can change your thoughts and discover your potential. Transform your life by focusing on your overall well-being. So then, until next time, continue working on being the best you possible.